Hey everyone, Kev Schofield, Turbo Kev on the Home Racing World Forum. I just got my ceramic block today in the mail, and I have never soldered with a ceramic block. Truth be told, I am very new to soldering brass, but there's a lot of discussion about it on the forum and a lot of people jumping in and doing this, and I thought as a complete newbie, for the at least up until 2 weeks ago, I thought I would just give a demonstration of how easy it is to solder some brass together. This is my first chassis that I did. I used kind of big frame rails on this, bigger than what Harry has used, but I used his method for aligning the rear axle and getting the motor mount installed. I even added a couple of little frame rails for a rear bumper. And this is going to fit a Camaro body that I'm doing. And then I've got another one here that I'm working on for the sportsman race. But since you can never have too many chassis, I thought I would start on another one here. So I've already got a couple pieces of brass cut to length. This is the motor mount, the Professor motor mount. This is the ceramic block that I got from Amazon. I don't remember how much it was. It was under 15 bucks. And then these are little tapered pins. I got these on eBay, about 40 of them for, I don't know, $10 or $12. So, when soldering brass, you want to clean up the parts first. I've already cleaned up one of these. Here's one that's not clean. Super easy. Obviously just take it, rub it back and forth on some sandpaper. This is 400 grit. I will verify that in a second. Maybe 800. I think it's 800. No, 400. What do you know? So some 400 scuffs it up. These little channels right here is where the brass is going to sit on the motor mount. Scuff that up a bit. Not a big deal. For flux, which helps the solder flow into cracks, this is what I'm using. Just a typical paste flux. To use that, just put a little in the spot where the solder wants to flow. And then I've got my two rails. It would help if you mounted it in the correct configuration. The motor attaches on this side. Axles would be to the rear. Alright, so get this thing roughly into position here, and then align it so that the rails are just at the very back of the motor mount. I think one of the things I notice about this ceramic block that I like is that because of the grid pattern of the holes on here, you can kind of get things lined up square. So that's interesting. Alright, so I'm just going to place a pin here. Then on the other side, just find the next closest available spot to slip one of these things in. And because they're tapered, it actually, squeezes in a bit, and so you got a nice tight fit there. Even with just those two pins, it's got a good amount of rigidity. So again, I'm just double checking that I'm relatively square on the back here, which it looks like I am. Just because I can, I guess I'll put a couple of extra pins in here. Probably make that tighter. Just hit the camera. There we go. I know it's compelling video. Try to contain yourself. Alright, so now that's in there, nice and sturdy. Looks to be relatively square. Those are all good things. And here's what I'm going to use as a torch. I got this at the local Ace hardware store for $12.99 or so. It does not have a self-lighter. You do have to light it with another flame. is adjustable, which is nice. The solder I'm using is just this is ancient. It's an old Radio Shack 6040 rosin core solder. It's probably been in my toolbox for 25 years. And so what I'm going to do is just heat up the brass here. Because the goal is to get the brass hot enough to melt the solder. Not actually, light the solder with the flame. And once that brass is hot enough, see that? Now that all flowed down through the crack here. Do a little extra, a little bit at the front. That kind of all flows in there. A little bit of a mess, but cleans up afterwards. And get this side nice and hot as well. See how that flows right in there? Alright. You definitely don't want to grab this immediately after soldering, because the brass does get quite hot. I will say this is absolutely cool to the touch, right up to the edge of the brass. So that I like that about the ceramic. Let me get these pins out of here. That one might still be pretty hot. Oh, just to be on the safe side, let's do this. Pick that up with that, and that. Let's see. So, we do have solder flowed through on both sides there, and as you can see, it doesn't look real pretty yet. I know Austin had made a post about how his were turning, black and burned and silver. Well, guess what? Here you go. It's kind of black and burned and silver. But after the fact, once this cools down a bit, it's already getting there. Once this cools down a bit, I'll take the sandpaper, probably 800, and I'll clean up the rails again and clean up the bottom, and then I'll get an edge on it. I'll clean up these little seams. You can see how the solder flowed in, on the underside real nice. And then I've also got a Dremel attachment that's a little wire wheel, and so I'll put that on a medium speed, and I'll just I'll just go over all of this, and that cleans up any of this residue. I've also got a rag I'll wipe off this flux, extra flux stuff with. And then once you do that, it cleans it up real nice, to the point where you get something that is like this, nice and smooth and relatively clean looking. Certainly not high quality like some of the stuff I've seen on the board, but certainly good enough for me and probably for most people. So there you go. That's my little first time soldering on the ceramic block, and hopefully that's a help to someone.